That scene plays out in some version every single day. And most people watching it would assume the woman in the designer outfit had her life together. They would be wrong. One of the most counterintuitive truths in personal finance, one that genuinely wealthy people understand and almost nobody else does, is that looking rich is often the thing keeping you broke, and looking poor, or at least unremarkable, might be one of the most powerful financial strategies available to you. Now, before you click off, I want to be very clear about what this video is and is not. This is not about deprivation. It is not about being cheap or pretending you have less than you do, or some kind of financial asceticism that makes your life miserable. This is about understanding a deeply human psychological trap, one that the entire consumer economy is designed to exploit, and then choosing not to walk into it. I've spent way too much time obsessing over the behavioral science behind status spending and wealth signaling, and what I found genuinely changed how I think about money. Let's get into it. Here is a fact that does not get talked about nearly enough. The idea that wealthy people display their wealth through clothes, cars, watches, neighborhoods, vacations is not ancient. It is not human nature. It is a marketing invention that accelerated dramatically in the 20th century and went completely off the rails with social media. For most of human history, the genuinely wealthy were actually quite private about it. Old money, as it is called, has always been understated. The flashy display of wealth was historically associated with people who were new to it, insecure about it, or faking it. The shift happened when mass production created a problem. How do you get people to buy more than they need? The answer the consumer economy landed on was status. If you could attach social meaning to a product, if owning it said something about who you were or who you were becoming, people would buy it, not because they needed it, but because of what they believed it communicated to others. A handbag stopped being a bag. It became a signal. A car stopped being transportation. It became a statement. And so a massive engine was built, worth trillions of dollars, entirely designed to make you feel like your social worth is visible in what you own. And we bought it completely. We built financial lives around looking successful rather than being financially stable. We went into debt to maintain an image that we thought would earn us respect from people who were simultaneously going into debt to earn respect from us. The whole thing is a collective hallucination. And the people who figured that out first quietly got very, very rich while everyone else was busy performing. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called the hedonic treadmill. The idea is this: humans adapt to new circumstances far faster than they expect to. When you buy something exciting, you get a spike of pleasure. Then, very quickly, that thing becomes your new normal. The excitement fades, and now you need the next thing to recreate the feeling. This is not a character flaw. It is how human psychology is wired. The problem is that consumer culture has built an entire economy on top of it. Research on happiness and spending consistently finds that status purchases, the things we buy primarily because of how they look to others, have among the fastest adaptation rates of anything we spend money on. The new car feeling is gone in weeks. The designer bag stops registering within a month. The upgraded apartment becomes just where you live almost immediately. Experiences, by contrast, adapt far more slowly. Relationships adapt even more slowly. But those are not what advertising sells you because they are harder to monetize. And underneath all of it is a mechanism called social comparison, our deeply hardwired tendency to evaluate ourselves relative to the people around us. When everyone around you is signaling a certain level of wealth, the brain interprets not signaling at that level as falling behind. It reads a normal car as a failure. It reads a modest apartment as something to be ashamed of. Not because these things are objectively bad, but because the reference group around you has set a different standard. And when you move to a wealthier reference group, the goalposts move too. It never ends. Unless you decide to stop playing. Let's make this concrete. I want to talk about the true cost of looking rich, because most people only calculate the price on the tag and none of the costs that come after. Every dollar spent on status is a dollar that is not compounding. And compounding is the one force in personal finance that actually builds wealth over time. So, every luxury purchase has two prices: what you paid and what that money would have been worth if it had been invested instead. Here is a rough example. A status-level car payment, let's call it $800 a month, invested instead over 30 years in a broad market index fund at an average 7% return, becomes over $900,000. The car, which is now worth nothing, cost you almost $1 million in future wealth. That is not the price of the car. That is the price of the image. And that math runs on every status purchase. The watch, the wardrobe, the neighborhood, the vacations posted for approval. Every single one of them has a compound opportunity cost that almost nobody calculates when they swipe the card. I have started thinking about status spending as a hobby. Some people golf. Some people collect art. Some people spend money on looking wealthy. All of these are choices about where resources go. But only one of them is disguised as something else, as success, as ambition, as social currency, so that people do not realize they are choosing it. Once you see it as a discretionary hobby that happens to be insanely expensive and delivers diminishing emotional returns, the calculation changes completely. There is a landmark study of American wealth that produced one of the most inconvenient findings in personal finance. When researchers actually tracked down high net worth individuals and studied their behavior, the profile that emerged looked nothing like what we see in luxury advertising. The majority drove used cars. They lived in modest homes well below what their income could support. They shopped at ordinary grocery stores. They wore unremarkable clothes. They were, to outside observation, completely indistinguishable from everyone else on the street. And they were wealthy precisely because of that. This is called stealth wealth, and it is not accidental frugality. It is a deliberate, conscious decision to decouple financial reality from financial appearance, to let the gap between income and spending quietly fill with investable assets while the outside world sees nothing particularly remarkable. The people who practice stealth wealth are not embarrassed about their money. They are not hiding it out of shame. They have simply decided that their net worth is not for public consumption, and that impressing strangers is one of the most expensive things a person can do. Here is the paradox that I find genuinely fascinating. In many cases, the loudest financial signals are the clearest evidence of financial fragility. The lease on the luxury car, the designer bag bought on a payment plan, the penthouse apartment that takes 70% of the monthly paycheck. These things read as success from the outside. From a balance sheet perspective, they are the opposite. Meanwhile, the person driving the paid-off sedan with a seven-figure investment account is completely invisible. Wealth, real wealth, tends to be quiet because it has nothing to prove. Here is something that does not get talked about enough. When you build a wealthy-looking life, you do not just pay for it once. You commit to a social ecosystem that continuously bills you. The neighborhood signals what school your kids attend. The school signals what vacations you take and how you talk about them. The vacations signal what restaurants are appropriate. The restaurants signal what you wear to them. Every status signal pulls you further into a web of expectations that auto-escalates. And opting out becomes harder the further in you go because the social cost of stepping back starts to feel enormous. This is lifestyle creep, but with a social layer on top of it. And the social layer is what makes it so difficult to address because it is no longer just about money. It is about belonging. It is about how you are perceived by people whose opinions you care about. Cutting back on the expensive dinners is not just a financial decision. It feels like a social one. Here is something that does not get talked about enough. When you build a wealthy-looking life, you do not just pay for it once. You commit to a social ecosystem that continuously bills you. The neighborhood signals what school your kids attend. The school signals what vacations you take and how you talk about them. The vacations signal what restaurants are appropriate. The restaurants signal what you wear to them. Every status signal pulls you further into a web of expectations that auto-escalates. And opting out becomes harder the further in you go because the social cost of stepping back starts to feel enormous. This is lifestyle creep, but with a social layer on top of it. And the social layer is what makes it so difficult to address because it is no longer just about money. It is about belonging. It is about how you are perceived by people whose opinions you care about. Cutting back on the expensive dinners is not just a financial decision. It feels like a social one. Downgrading the car feels like an announcement. And so people keep paying, keep performing, keep maintaining an image they can barely afford. Because the social cost of being seen as less successful feels worse than the financial cost of faking it. Except the math does not care about the social layer. The math runs quietly in the background, regardless of what anyone thinks about your car. And eventually, always, the math catches up. The person who prioritized social appearance over financial reality will hit a point where the gap between the image and the account balance becomes impossible to maintain. The financial crisis they could not see coming was visible in the numbers years before it arrived. The math always wins. The only question is whether you work with it or against it. I want to spend some time on what is actually on the other side of this, because I think most conversations about not spending stop at the sacrifice and never get to the point. What does it actually feel like to have decoupled your financial life from your social appearance? Because I do not think people fully appreciate what they are buying when they make that choice. The first thing that changes is quieter than I expected. When you stop using spending as a social signal, you stop needing external validation to feel financially okay. You are no longer performing for an audience. The new car announcement, the vacation photo, the apartment upgrade post, these lose their psychological pull when your sense of financial security comes from a number in an account rather than a reaction in a comment section. And that shift
from external validation to internal security is one of the most underrated benefits of genuine financial stability.
The second thing is practical and enormous. Options start to replace obligations. When you are not locked into a lifestyle that requires a specific income level to maintain, your choices expand dramatically. You can take a lower-paying job that you actually love. You can take a sabbatical. You can say no to a toxic work environment because you have a cushion that makes the word no available to you. You can absorb a crisis, a health issue, a family emergency, a market downturn without it becoming a catastrophe. That is freedom, not the freedom of a luxury brand, the actual functional freedom that most people think money is supposed to buy, and that status spending specifically prevents. And here is the thing nobody tells you. Once you have real financial security, the desire to signal it mostly disappears, because the people who are the most at peace with their financial lives are not the ones posting the most about it. They are the ones who do not need to. The flex, if we are going to use that word, is not the car in the driveway. It is being able to walk away from anything that does not serve you. That is what the money is for, and you cannot have it if you spent it on the appearance of having it.
Okay, let's make this practical, because I am not here to give you a philosophy and send you home. Here are 5 concrete moves that shift you away from status-driven spending and toward actual wealth building. And none of them require you to be weird about it or broadcast your choices to anyone. Move 1. Audit your status spending separately. Go through the last 3 months of spending and do one specific thing. Separate purchases into 2 lists. List 1 is functional, things that serve a real purpose in your life. List 2 is performative, things you bought primarily because of how they would look to someone else. Do not judge yourself while you do it. Just see the number. For most people, that number on list 2 is genuinely surprising. Seeing it clearly is the first move, because you cannot make deliberate choices about something you have never looked at directly.
Move 2. Change your reference group. Social comparison is inevitable. You will always be measuring yourself against someone. The question is, who? If your primary reference group is people who compete on visible wealth, your brain will keep generating the feeling that you are behind. But if you deliberately expand your reference group to include people who measure success differently, by financial independence, by time freedom, by building something meaningful, the pressure recalibrates. This is not about finding new friends. It is about what content you consume, what conversations you seek out, what metrics you let your brain normalize. It changes faster than you think. Move 3. Redirect the status budget to invisible wealth. Whatever you are currently spending on status, the part of the budget that is genuinely about appearance rather than function, redirect it to investments. Not all at once. Start with 20% of that category and move it automatically to an investment account on payday. You probably will not notice the change in your daily life, but the compound effect of redirecting status spending to invested assets is dramatic over a decade. 4. Buy quality, not logos. The goal is not to buy the cheapest version of everything. The goal is to stop paying for the logo. There is a real difference between a well-made item that lasts for years and a luxury item that costs 10 times as much because of a name on the label. Buy the former aggressively. Avoid the latter almost entirely. Quality and status are not the same thing, and conflating them is how luxury brands get you to pay for their marketing budget. Move 5. Let your results speak eventually.
The people who practice stealth wealth and actually build it do not stay quiet about it to be mysterious. They stay quiet because they are focused. And then years later, the results speak in ways that no Instagram post ever could. The early retirement, the paid-off house, the ability to help the people they love, the option to stop doing work they hate. These are the things that other people eventually notice and cannot easily explain. Sustainable financial success is the loudest signal there is. It just takes longer to transmit than a car photo.
Everything I have talked about in this video is ultimately downstream of one thing: how you define success. If success means looking wealthy, then all the advice in the world will not help, because the spending is not irrational given the goal. The problem is the goal. And changing the goal is harder than changing the behavior, because the goal is tied to identity, to how you see yourself and how you want others to see you. That is not a budgeting problem. That is a self-concept problem. This is what the behavioral research keeps coming back to. People are not buying cars, clothes, and watches. They are buying a version of themselves that they believe those things create. The put-together professional, the successful entrepreneur, the person who made it. The product is just the vehicle for the identity purchase. And once you understand that, the question becomes, is there a cheaper, more effective way to build that identity? The answer is yes. Building actual financial security feels better than performing financial security. It just takes longer to start and longer to show. Your net worth is a reflection of your choices over time, not your worth as a person, not your intelligence or your effort or your character, but it does reflect what you prioritized. And if you have been prioritizing the appearance of success over the reality of it, the balance sheet will show that honestly, even when the Instagram feed does not. The shift I am describing is not about becoming someone who does not care about anything. It is about caring about the right things and deciding that your actual financial life is worth more than its image.
The woman in plain jeans at the dealership did not look wealthy. She was wealthy. And that gap between how something looks and what it actually is where real financial stability lives. Most people spend their entire adult lives trying to close that gap by making the outside look better. The people who actually get there do it by making the inside the priority and letting the outside be whatever it needs to be. You do not have to tell anyone about this. You do not have to announce that you are choosing stealth wealth or opting out of status competition. You just have to redirect. One less status purchase, one more automatic investment. One decision made consistently that serves the actual financial life you are building instead of the one you are performing. The results will show eventually. They always do. And they will be worth far more than anything that could have been photographed.